I wonder what nationality these benders were. I don't know. People said they had a real extremely guttural accent. It was hard to understand that. There's one group of people that I know that has a real guttural sounding accent. They almost sound like they're going like they're spitting or something. They're talking like they're part animal or something. Probably lower than animal. A few people maybe wondered where they get the word Twin Peaks. Well, supposedly it's the name of the town, which, you know, is from the mountains around. Well, yeah, but everything in the show obviously is symbolic. I believe it comes from this symbol right here, the heart. You know, the heart is actually a ancient pagan sexual symbol. It doesn't stand for the heart in your chest. It can represent a woman's buttocks, breasts, or but more likely a woman's pubic area. They're symbols for male sexual symbols too. The obelisk, maypole, the sword, the magic wand. These are all represents of male sexuality, but the heart is a symbol of female sexuality. And you'll see here, this heart has been broken. This heart's been torn apart. This is a sacrificed vision. This whole show basically revolves around the idea of female sacrificing the female, which is also the case with JonBenét Ramsey. JonBenét Ramsey was born about the time, just before the show, about a year or so before the show aired. Now, she hadn't been murdered yet, so if this is referring to her, means that it already pre-planned it. Now, that might sound really hard for many people to believe, but these people do stuff like this. For people who have studied, researched 9/11 quite in-depthly, it becomes pretty obvious after a while that 9/11 was planned years ahead of time, probably decades. And that's one of the reasons why they can do a lot of this stuff, is they got a lot of people in high positions of power. They all are working together to create this, whatever their little game is, their disaster, their murder, their mass murder. And they plan it decades in advance. Make sure that all the key people are in the right places ahead of time to pull these things off. They pre-plan a lot of things years in advance, and they put little clues in the TV shows and the movies. I don't know why. Of course, in '92, when this series came out, you didn't have, you know, as much technology and the internet as you have now for, you know, so they probably figured nobody would be able to figure this thing out. And even today, most people wouldn't have figured this out, but I'm kind of a weirdo. I can figure out a lot of weird things. But I've noticed kind of a JonBenét Ramsey type theme kind of pops up in certain things that were similar to her and her murder. It seems to pop up in this series. I'll give you some background on JonBenét Ramsey if you're not familiar with the story. This was several years ago. She was on the face of every tabloid, and that itself tells you something. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of children that are murdered every year in this country, and there's, believe it or not, several 100,000 children that disappear every year in this country. And this is forbidden information. Most of them are unwanted children, because unwanted children nobody makes a big deal of if they disappear, you know. But there's a lot of murdered children. Why is this JonBenét Ramsey getting so much media attention? I mean, her face was on tabloid covers more than Princess Diana at times. I mean, it was all over the place. Now, the thing is, a lot of people were upset by the fact that she's like a 6-year-old girl, and even before the age of 6, her mother is dressing her up like an adult woman in very sensuous ways and taking her to these beauty contests for little girls. There was this group in Twin Peaks. They're kind of like a secret society kind of. I mean, they were supposedly fighting evil. But anyway, this is their little calling card, their little symbol for their group, just happens to be the Christmas tree. If you look at the amount of media publicity that this JonBenét Ramsey murder got, especially in the National Enquirer, the National Enquirer, you'll note that this is not a coincidence. There's thousands of children that die and are murdered, and none of them get anywhere near this much media attention, especially in a rag like the National Enquirer. Now, the National Enquirer was owned and operated by the CIA and is part of a mind control project. So the fact that this is in the forefront all the time, and every day you get a different theory about how she died. I mean, it's almost certain that this was pre-planned. Almost certain.
Excuse me, who are you?
I'm, Jeff Shapiro.
Are you a member of this church?
Not yet, but Father Haverstock and I are certainly talking about it.
Yeah, well, I don't believe you. Why are you really here?
Here for the same reason as you, ma'am. Find my faith and be able to keep it.
Raul, I think this man is spying.
Spying? On who? What is this about, Jeff?
There's some misunderstanding. This woman
He has
obviously...
been following Patsy ever since we came to church.
Jeff? I think we better go talk in my office for a second. I'm sorry. Thank you, Susan. Jeffrey, I don't know what this is about. But if Susan says that you've been spying, then it could very well be that you have been spying. So why don't you just tell me the truth?
I did tell you the truth. I'm a Jew who wants to convert to Christianity.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask to see your driver's license.
You don't have to treat me like a criminal.
Jeffrey, you're obviously withholding something. Why don't you just tell me what it is?
Okay. I work for the Globe.
The Globe? But that magazine is pure trash. All you do is make up lies about people.
The whole murder thing doesn't make any sense, the way the official version. I mean, the parents had to have been involved. There's virtually no way they couldn't have been. What happened, okay, is their daughter was missing. They searched the house, they couldn't find her. Then they found a note on the stairs. Now, this doesn't make any sense either. Why would somebody put the note on the Ramsey note on the stairs? Saying they wanted $118,000 for their back. And so they called the police. Now, supposedly the Ramseys had already, and their friends had searched the house. Then the police came and they searched the house, didn't know anything. Then later on, the father went down to the basement and found his daughter down in the basement, her body. Now, how nobody noticed that, I don't know. The cops checked the area, no sign of forced entry. There was fresh snow, no tracks leading up to the house. There was one window, I believe, in the basement that had been broken, and somebody could have possibly gotten into there, and that had been broken for a while. The autopsy report showed that she had been molested numerous times. Okay, so this wasn't a one-time thing. According to Kathy O'Brien, actually, I think it was their book Access Denied, she mentioned that they found the book How to Create a Sex Slave with a Stun Gun in that house when the police were investigating. The police completely botched this investigation, probably deliberately. After looking at all the evidence, I would say this case was deliberately botched. Okay, the police were giving out false information to the press, not once, not twice, over and over again. The police lied about several things, okay. The press continued to put out false information about this case from day one. Even after it was proven to be false information, they continued to do so. There was no forensic expert. They didn't preserve any of the evidence. I would be willing to bet very good money that the police chief in this town and probably several of the higher ups in this town are Satanists, which is why they chose to have this done here, which is probably one of the reasons John Ramsey moved to this area. I was in Boulder before, and there's a lot of weird stuff. It's a beautiful town in a lot of ways, but there's some weird occult stuff there.
Expert to help them collect evidence at the scene, the Boulder police contaminated or missed what that intruder left.
Were you called to the Ramsey house?
No, we were not called to the Ramsey house in the initial stages, no. Go there, I can tell you that, you know, the people that were there collecting the evidence did a
Law, the FBI is no longer in charge. For the first time, Ron Walker explains what happened.
I offered at that point any and all FBI resources that were available to assist the Boulder police in their investigation. And that offer was declined.
The Boulder police called the FBI back into the case the next day. Fatal mistakes are made during those first crucial 24 hours. Neighbors aren't questioned, searches aren't done, and the key witnesses aren't interviewed.
Was the family interviewed after the body was found?
Were we interviewing John and Patsy? No, we wouldn't. We weren't. That would have been totally unreasonable at that point in time.
Walker disagrees. He says the parents should have been interviewed.
The parents or the folks that are going to be interviewed have to be made to understood that although this is a very traumatic event for them to have been involved, you know, they have to try to put a little bit of that aside and sit down, if just briefly, and try to recount the events as they recall them to the investigator.
We've been told that what should have happened that morning is, instead of being told just to leave the
accident, and you were dealing with that grief.
Yes, yeah, that was tough. It was, that really was a changing point in my life when Beth died.
I knew that name Ramsey meant something. I remember, yeah, it's a pharaoh of Egypt. Ramsey II. Supposedly the one that screwed with Moses, which isn't really even true. But is this a coincidence? Probably not. 3 neighbors said they heard a blood-curdling scream that night. But the psychopathic Ramseys claim they didn't hear a thing. Oh, here's some more stuff about Ramsey. He was dating Beth Holloway, the mother of Natalie Holloway. Remember the Alabama student who disappeared during a trip to Aruba? The plot thickens. He was a military officer. You'll find a lot of these people were in the military. Also, you know, his oldest daughter from his first marriage died in a car accident. Ordinarily, I would say that was probably just an accident, but knowing this guy, I don't know. And of course now, Patsy is now dead. Did she just die of ovarian cancer, like they said, or did they kill her? Who knows? One thing that's clear, there's more than enough evidence to have arrested, especially Patsy. There's so much evidence and witnesses that said there were things found, like the boy's pocket knife that the housekeeper took away and hid in a drawer. And Patsy would have found it when she was looking for sheets. The blanket that was in the dryer, and only Patsy would have known about that. There's no question. Anyone else, they would have been arrested. And yet, 4 months after this, they still hadn't been arrested. Yeah. Several experts agree that Patsy Ramsey is the one who wrote this ransom note. The housekeeper said that Patsy became really moody just before Christmas. It's like I've said before, you know, she was part of it, but you know, she didn't do it all by herself. No, there is clearly, there's evidence of some other, there's DNA, pubic hairs found apparently from another male that's never been identified. Probably never will be because they don't want them to be identified.
If I were a resident of Boulder, I would tell my friends to keep your baby close to you.